Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the afternoon committee meeting committee meeting of the Bellingham City Council. This morning, actually, we had the planning committee met at 9 o'clock, and we'll have a report on that this evening. Right now, we'll go to our first afternoon committee meeting, which is Public Works and Public Safety Committee. Terry Borneman is the chair.
Thank you, Michael. And joining me on the committee is Roxanne Murphy and Jean Knutson. We have two items before us today. The first is the ordinance adopting a base rate for the 2018 transportation impact fee per Bellingham Municipal Code 19.06.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ted Carlson, Public Works Director, along with Chris Como, Transportation Planner. As you know, the City of Bellingham charges a transportation impact fee for development within the city. That's based on the number of PM peak trips caused by the development, created by the development. As outlined in the Bellingham Municipal Code, we adjust that base TIF fee each year. There's a methodology laid out in the TIF ordinance that says how we do that. We look at 5 years previous construction cost, actual capital construction costs on transportation projects, qualifying transportation projects, looking at local dollars only. We also look at the current year construction, so 2017 construction cost. Same thing, qualifying transportation projects, local dollars only. And then we look at the program cost in the 6-year TIP, which Council adopted this year, the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program, which goes from 2018 out through 2023, looking at, again, local construction programmed transportation dollars in the 6-year TIP. We then look at the number of trips available as it's outlined in the projects in the comprehensive plan over the 20-year period and divide that by the annual capacity and come up with a base TIF rate. Using that methodology this year, the TIF rate actually goes down a little bit. The adopted 2017 rate was $2,138. Going through the process this year, 2018 would be $2,017. So that's a reduction of $121 per PM peak trip. So it's going down. There's some information in the packet that shows the TIF rate's been fairly consistent over the years. We see slight up and down, but it's been fairly consistent. It is one of the lower TIF rates, the second lowest in Whatcom County when we look at the comparable urban centers. And then we generally are in the lower third to quarter of our comparables within Western Washington. So our TIF rate by comparison is very low, but we have generated quite a bit of money. Generally accounts for about 15 to 20% of our transportation costs that we can get through transportation impact fees. And so we've been in that neighborhood of $900,000, $1 million a year that we receive in TIF revenue, and we're trending on that this year. Chris got some updated numbers through the end of October, and we're at $825,000 this year. So right on budget, right on trend. Chris is here to answer any questions that you might have about how the calculation is done, what projects we look at, or any other questions that council may have. But this is an ordinance, so we are asking for council approval today.
I'll start out. I'll move approval. I think the way you guys do this has been consistent for a long time, and I have no problem with it.
Yes, Roxanne.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see that there's even a, a slight decrease because from my experience, what I believe is that oftentimes what may seem nominal to us can really help projects pencil in the long run, and our community is very busy redeveloping, so I'm definitely going to support this, and I thank you for the methodology.
Yep. I do have to say, after all the years, I do like this system a whole lot more than breaking it out like it used to be by different sections around town, each one different, because I know that caused a lot of problems for staff, for council, and others. And so, any other comments, questions? Michael.
I just have a comment because I had a discussion online about this, and there seems to be this belief that we have a policy goal. Either we're trying to keep the rate low or we're trying to keep the rate high. Actually, we're just trying to cover the cost for the programs, and that this TIF rate goes up and down depending upon what our transportation needs are, which is why I think it's incumbent upon us to plan the city wisely so that we can minimize the infrastructure costs, maximize the value of what we already have. So it's not that we are intentionally lowering or raising the rate. I think we're managing transportation projects. I think I hope that's a fair characterization.
Yes, Dan.
Sorry, just one clarifying question. So I'm just trying to understand the difference between a gas station with a convenience market would pay about almost $20,000 on the citywide impact fee, and a medical or dental office will only pay $6.98. I'm trying to understand the rationale, that's all.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the land use category for the second one that you asked about.
A medical or dental office.
Yeah, so just to get real basic, I'll try to be really brief here. We, like just about every other jurisdiction, uses the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, and that's where all of these rates come from, this table that you're referencing here in the packet. This is just a sample of the most frequent ones that we see, but in answer to your question directly, a gas station, which is very clearly auto-oriented, is going to have a much higher trip generation rate than, say, a medical office, and it also depends on where in the city these uses are taking place. We would not typically see a gas station or convenience store, say, in the middle of one of our urban villages, but we might see a dental office. So there's other things that affect that rate. But the rate that you're asking about is based on the number of vehicle trips to and from the site.
Thank you, it's very helpful.
Any other comments? We have a motion before us. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will recommend approval to the full council tonight. Our next item is a review of the Public Works Director's decision denying requests for retail water and sewer services at 3465 Airport Drive. And before we get going, we have had a request by the applicant to be able to address the council. Is that, the committee, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. I want
Okay,
to
again-
get that out of the way right away. Okay.
Thank you. Again, Ted Carlson, Public Works Department, and along with Mr. Zagby, who's the president of Alpha Technology, and that's the business located at this parcel that requested water. And I'll provide just a little bit of background. The area in question, the parcels in question, are in the city's UGA, but they're outside the city limits off of Airport Drive. There are 3 parcels. 2 of the parcels are already developed. There is a map in your packet, and I did bring something for the overhead too, if that helps. But 2 of the 3 parcels are developed. The business is operational. The 3rd parcel is vacant, and that's the one in question today. That is the parcel that Alpha would like to develop to expand their business. They're growing, and they have made a request for water service on the 3rd parcel. The city repealed the utility service zones, as you know, so areas outside the city limits that do not have a contract for service or aren't existing customers on the parcel are not eligible for new service. The city no longer extends utilities into the UGA. This is direct retail service, so it's not a wholesale contract. We wouldn't be selling to a water district or association, direct retail service to Alpha Technologies. So when we look at the reading of the code, the BMC provides only one very minor exception to extending utilities, and that's for public health reasons, most typically when you have a failed septic system, and we would extend sewer because the septic has failed and it's created a public health concern. So in this case, it didn't meet that threshold for public health. We did look at, are there any ways to serve this business? Obviously, the city would very much like to see the business grow and create new jobs that our community would like to see. The reality is the code does not have any flexibility to do that. So in reading the code, there really was no conclusion other than for the Public Works Director to deny the request, which brings us here today. As you know, the code does allow for applicants to appeal my decision to the City Council. I would just say a couple things that the city did consider. Obviously, we are looking at annexation. The council and the mayor have directed staff to pursue an annexation phasing plan that would look at this area in particular. We have a pending annexation at Bennett Bakerview, which is just to the east of this property. That will be coming to council very, very quickly, probably just after the first of the year. And along with that, we have an agreement with the airport to annex the airport industrial properties. That's through a settlement agreement, an interlocal agreement between the city and the port. So that we will be pursuing as well. And the mayor has asked staff to look even further west and look at the remaining UGAs west of the city limits, and this property would be in that. So one option, which is usually the remedy for requests for service outside the city limits, is annexation, and that's what we typically try to do. Not too long ago, a request was before council for Mount Baker Highway, going east out the Mount Baker Highway towards Britain, and the remedy there was to try to move that property forward with annexation, and that's pending now and will be coming to council soon. So annexation would probably take between 6 months, probably on the quickest, if everything moved forward and there was no opposition and no protest, just the process of moving forward. I've been talking to Rick Sepler and Greg Ockhott about that, and that's the number that we're saying, about 6 months to annex the area if we were to move now. There is another option that we pursued, and it's up to the applicant whether or not it works for them, because it's their decision and it's their property and it would impact them, and that's could the property be somehow joined to one of the other 2 properties that's currently served. And we talked to planning and the county planning department, PDS, about that. There might be a method that works, which is a covenant to bind. Would be between the county and the property owners to bind this third parcel with one of the properties that's already served. There are 3 meters serving the 2 properties that have water. So again, it would be up to the applicant and what their ultimate need is, but there's probably capacity within those existing 3 meters to serve the need of the third lot. But that encumbers their property, and my understanding is it's not something the owners want to pursue because it impacts their flexibility and doesn't meet their strategic plan. Mr. Zagby can speak to that more. So absent those 2 options of binding the properties or annexation, again, we felt that there really was no other option other than to deny, but certainly answer any questions that you have. I don't know if the Mayor, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
We did try to come up with at least 2 options, the annexation one, which is a little more complicated, the binding agreement, which isn't. But the truth is that I personally believe we need to revisit the decision that we've made, because we're going through this many times with individual property owners, or now a business that, of course, we'd like to see expand. And so what I would say is I think that our policy itself needs to be re-examined, because we don't want to lose the opportunity to make connections that make sense and to allow the growth, whether it's jobs or housing, that makes sense. So I'm not saying open all borders, but I'm saying that I would like to bring some recommendations or some information back to the council on this, so that people that are coming to us and asking for relief, and they live right on the other side of the street, or their business is right next door to where they are, that we don't have to tell them no based on the basic law that we've passed several years ago that probably needs to be revisited.
So I don't have anything further to add.
Yeah.
Council has any questions for me, or if Mr. Zagby would be provide an opportunity to speak.
Questions first? Okay, we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you very much for letting me attend the meeting today and just say a few words about our request.
And could you identify yourself for the record?
Sure. My name is Drew Zagby, and I'm the president at Alpha Technologies, Inc., over where said property is being discussed. And I've been with Alpha 9 years. Company's been in town here. I'm sure you're all familiar with us. We have our shareholders set up here, over 30 years ago. And, they actually handed this to me, which was put together about 25 years ago, which was their master plan for the property that included this lot that we're talking about. We've always methodically grown the business, and we continue to thrive in the global markets that we're servicing. And right now we have a need to grow, and we operate both here and in Suwanee, Georgia, because our customers like to see redundant supply capabilities in case there's ever disruptions and the like. So we have a need now to increase our production capacity, and it is preferred that we do it here, but we have a kind of an urgent need that we can't wait around that long for And so that's why we're coming with this urgency, because we will be completing kind of a logistics and distribution center initially, and then an engineering center in addition to that. Probably 50 jobs to begin, and then another 100 on top of that that would occupy this site and obviously portions of the current. So, we really are urging council to look favorably on our request, because we want also to see the jobs created here, but we can't wait around. Even 6 months is too long to wait. We're going to proceed one way or the other, because I do have alternative facilities in Georgia right now that are ready and willing to take us, but we're holding off on this because we want to do this construction and expand here in Whatcom County. Just as a note, whether it's relevant or not, but I think the water facility we installed when we did the property improvements, there's an 8-inch main already there. We just need the meter approval. That was all done at our expense previously, and hope that the growth plan that we had and the expectations for growth in the city can match up here. And I'm happy to answer any questions about our request.
Okay. Any questions from committee?
Just a question for the mayor. How soon do you think you could get options to us?
Well, I think Ted explained to you the options that we
No, I mean,
have.
the policy, that it's an 11-year-old policy, and I think we really need to get on it and look at it.
I would say that it wouldn't be until after the first of the year, but we've been talking about it for quite a while, ever since we started denying water requests that were coming forward to us. But as far as the urgency that this particular company's feeling, I don't think that we'll be changing, that we would be able to thoughtfully change the code and involve the public in a time frame potentially that they might need for their decisions. But we're going to proceed regardless of what happens with this request, because we need to do it.
Okay, I've got a question for Peter. On this, I know what I'd like to do, but I also need clarification on what we are supposed to do by the law. And my understanding is that we're supposed to base our decision on the law that stands now, and not on just on our personal opinion. Is that correct? Because otherwise we can lose an appeal or anything. Not that anyone's, but.
Yeah, Peter Raffato, City Attorney's Office. So the same criteria that the Public Works Director, Ted Carlson, applied when reviewing the request is the same criteria that the city by code is obligated to follow when evaluating the request, which has that one narrow exception for health and safety.
Okay, that's what it was. Yes, Gene.
Just real quick, then why do we have an appeal process where they can come and appeal to us, and if we wanted to, we could grant them water?
Well, the main reason would be if there's a factual question, I suppose, as to whether it truly meets public health and safety. You might have a different view of that. If you're in the ballpark, then there could be a different view that council has with respect to the facts.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Pinky and then Michael, but I'll need something from the council here, or committee here.
Thank you. I'm really struggling with this denial, and I'm glad that Public Works, you looked at options, but I know I've been a squeaky wheel about this policy, but here we are again. Our city desperately needs economic development, and the strongest way to do that is to support our businesses that are here, that are growing. And for us to deny a business with the potential of 50+ jobs just seems so opposite of what we are trying to achieve in our goals here. And this policy has not been serving us for a while. We've been talking about reviewing it for a long time, and I know I'm not on this committee, but tonight we'll have an opportunity to talk about it. But, time is money, and I don't want to lose a bunch of jobs that we have the potential to gain because of a policy that no longer serves us. Mm-hmm. So would strongly like us to consider a way to find resolution on this as soon as possible and not deny them water.
Michael, you had a comment?
Yeah, I'm going to slightly disagree. I think there's good logic behind the policy, and that is that we don't create de facto urban expansion without actually expanding our urban boundaries. Those two things need to occur together. So there's really good reason behind it. I think what's more broken than the policy is annexation. We've had annexation process for this area of town pending for I don't know how long, and it hasn't occurred yet. Annexation is the usual, ordinary, typical, orderly way for us to grow and extend services at the same time. So I think there's as much of a problem with annexation. We've had a big, longer-term conversation about annexation. Maybe Mr. Sepler wants to comment on the annexation process. So I'm seeing that there's still a good reason behind the policy, but because it's out of sync with annexation, that's part of what we're going to cause this problem. In terms of a way out of this, one of the reasons we don't expend services is if there is no annexation plan, then may not be any good reason. Well, in this case, there's a clear and definite intention and desire and logic to annexation too. Maybe the exception has to, or maybe we could write an exception that has to do with providing water services in the context of a pending annexation are treated differently than extending water service not in the context of pending annexation. That puts these two things back in sync. So I don't know, Mr. Sepler, or maybe
address
Mr.
that.
Mariner. I'm wading into some territory here.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to address let's see, saying that you have to annex. I mean, maybe Alan could talk about that too. But my thought is exactly what you said, Michael. Is if there makes sense to deliver water, then the truth is
It makes sense to annex.
annexation has to happen. So people can't say, I want the water, but I'm not going to annex. I mean, that would be the wrong policy to have, I believe. Having said that, I've been told over and over and over that we cannot bind someone. We can say you have to sign a no protest clause, but we cannot bind someone to agree to an annexation. Now, that was the legal opinion I've been given for at least 4 years. So, yes, I'd love to be able to do that, but legally I'm being told I can't. So maybe somebody could clarify that for the council.
Rick, you had a comment?
If I might.
Yes.
Just a clarification for the record, as council's aware, we're working on the annexation strategy. We'll be back in front of you, we imagine, your first or second meeting in January. Some factual information regarding this specific issue. If one binds lots together and the annexation were approved, subsequently one could have separation of those lots. It's a simple act to bind a lot together. It takes about a day. One could bind the lots together, and one could wait for the annexation to perfect in 6 months, and one could then change the lots back to their original configuration, perhaps even get greater density under our urban zoning. So, I mean, there is a solution set there for the issue. In terms of annexation, when those services were extended originally, they were extended with the social contract that you were agreeing to come into the city when annexation was possible. I'm here before you today to say that we believe annexation is possible. If we're directed, we can initiate a petition, and 6 months from now, barring any concern from the county, that property could be within the city. I guess the question is Alpha Tech committed to come into Bellingham? Thank you.
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, we could spend some time in executive session if warranted to talk about the ins and outs of binding these properties. The thing to keep in mind is that what drove this policy in the first place, and we had a process for folks to sign no protest to annexation, and what came out, what was happening despite those no protest to annexation were areas that to this day haven't been annexed. So we just want to get back into that and really understand the dynamics of that. Not only do we have those areas that may not be annexed, but secondly, they get developed in a way that ends up costing more when you do annex. So suffice it to say, there's a lot to talk about in terms of how you want to go back and change that policy, but there are sort of legal and the mechanics of annexation and when service is provided that you have to explore.
Yeah, yeah. Gene?
Well, I think, you know, when this first happened back in 2006, it was predominantly more about housing. This is an existing Bellingham business with existing Bellingham water, so I think there's a big difference there. When Michael talks about sprawl, it was predominantly about building homes and us supplying waterway outside the UGA, and I think this is a unique case, and it's unfortunate, but I'd be willing to go down the annexation road if the applicants would, but, you know, I'm having a hard time saying no to this one myself, too, so.
Yeah. I've got a real hard time saying no to it, but at the same time, I can't find any legal basis to say yes to it. I totally agree with Pinky that we need to review this, and I would like to see this, and so what I'm going to do just to move this along is I'm going to move that we uphold the decision and direct staff to bring that annexation forward and direct staff to talk with the applicant about that process of binding to see if that will work, because we want your business and stuff, but our hands are, at least for me, no matter, I really, you know, this is probably the hardest one I've ever had to say no with, because it doesn't fit. I know why we did it originally, and it made a lot of sense, and it was based on a lot of the logic behind it. But with the business here, but I can't find any legally, you know, my obligation is to interpret the law and bring that forward, and I can't come to any other conclusion. So that's my motion.
Well, unfortunately, you know, it's true. We are in that position, but this one here is, I don't know.
And any,
Yeah, Roxanne.
My background is in municipal economic development, and that's why this is so tough for me. But my service is for municipal economic development within our city limits right now. And that's why this is also very tough. I really want to support this business. I really want to support the development and the jobs. But I'm also an upkeeper of the code and the law as it's currently written. I do not agree with the way that our code and law is written. But I don't have the power right now to switch that up just in time for your business growth and expansion. I wish I did. But that's why I'm going to support Terry's motion, and I really hope we can come to some conclusion about annexation or binding or whatever it may be to help your business.
Terry, could you restate your motion again?
Okay, my motion is that we uphold the director's decision to deny water, and that we direct staff to bring forward the annexation as soon as possible, and that we direct staff to work with the applicant to see if the binding process can happen so we can make this work. Yes.
Peter, I just need clarification on the public health and safety perspective of this and how far-reaching a council can be, considering that we're in a homelessness crisis, we're in a housing crisis, we continually talk about flat wages, not opportunity for jobs. So we know that opportunities for jobs and livable wage jobs are part of public health and safety if you really dig it through enough. So how is there some definition on public health and safety and when we make our decision, and how far we can go with how it relates to our current economic situation and the problems that are very significant to this community?
Yeah, we don't have a definition, as far as I know, in the code, in this part of the code or anywhere in the code on what is health and safety. And I don't have the exact language of the code in front of me. I think it...
Alan Mariner, Assistant City Attorney. That terminology is coming right out of the Growth Management Act, and there is case law that defines that, and it's health, safety, and the environment. So it's more geared towards, in the case of Cooper's Point, it's geared towards the extension of a sewer line. That case was dealing with that, but that language is dealing with health, safety, and the environment. So it's an environmental issue. Okay, thank you.
Gary, I think he wanted to say one more word.
If I,
You're good.
good. So, first of all, I was going to say, until the gentleman just got up and spoke, if you would like me to put an infirmary in there and have a health and safety training center installed, we probably could come to see that as part of the project, but you ruined that, it sounds like, I don't know. But again, again, for even our own leadership team, you know, when they see the Holiday Inn going up the airport with how many hundred bathrooms and the water use there, and for our request, we really are an industrial setting where we're going to have, you know, basically a kitchen and the bathrooms to code to support the team in there. It's not a water-intensive process or anything like that. I just want to implore common sense judgment as much as possible if it can be seen, because again, you know, we don't want to be the ones to spoil the Whatcom County employment good news, but you know, we can't do it if you won't let us do it.
Mayor?
I want to clarify your motion, because the other thing that I had recommended is that we look at our code and see if there's something in the code that would make it more applicable to where we are now. So I know Michael said he didn't think the code should change. I personally disagree. I think it should. So is that part of your motion too? So
Well, I
there's
was going to make a
annex-
separate motion with that, but we could include it in the same.
Well, however
Yeah.
you want to do it, I just want to
Yeah.
make sure, because
Separately.
we're moving forward on the annexation.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about annexation for a very long time. The city traditionally has skipped over residential property and just taken commercial property in that area. And the reason it's taken us a little bit longer now is because I'm insisting that we take the residential property also, because we can't just keep cherry picking out there. And the other thing is, so then we have level of service, which is mainly fire and police. This expansion is not going to affect that. It's the residential that would be taken in and built out there that's going to hit the higher fire and police level of service. But I do want to bring back some changes. I'm not necessarily talking about wholesale changing everything, but I do want to. And Gary, I don't know, but would it be helpful if you explained why the consolidation of property, is there something specific they could know? Because this is something that you could do and then you could undo. So,
I mean, I think the undo part was maybe something that we didn't understand was possible. That part I'm not totally geared in on that. I didn't know that was an option. We were sort of told that was kind of a one way to go, and once you went down that path, you were there. There's some guidance that could help us
because
with
we'd be
that.
willing to talk to you a little bit more about that if you need more information about it.
At this point, we'll take all the help
Right.
we can get
Okay.
while there's still
Yeah.
time.
No, I really want to see
Do we want
this work, but at the same time, sometimes just using common sense when the law dictates that we can't, you know, really puts us in a bind with this. But I'm going to leave my motion as it stands, and I'll make another motion, if that's okay. So we have a motion before us. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Now, I would like to make another motion that we direct staff to bring back as soon as we can a review of the existing code, and that would be, I'm not sure what element that is of,
I know
but
what you're talking
yes, to bring back a review of the code for this.
Yeah, chapter 1536, which is service outside the corporate
1536,
limits.
yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Peter, just a point of clarification, if there is more work to be done among staff as it comes forward this evening, would this not be a postponement of this request at this time? We would still be denying this particular request, even though you all have more work to do together?
Under
Okay.
the COB, under the existing law we have, but under the existing law, we can talk to the applicant about the consolidation, which really wouldn't have anything to do with you, because that's a separate decision that gets made. So nothing's going to change between now and tonight as far as what the law is right now.
Yeah,
Yes,
just
Peter.
to add on to that, my understanding is that with that binding mechanism, which is, I understand to be revocable again fairly easily, that we wouldn't even need an application in the same way that we have now. Is that correct, Ted? That basically we would be providing water the same way we're providing water now?
Yeah, absolutely. If the properties were bound together through the covenant to bind, we could serve them tomorrow.
Good. Oh, okay, so Michael?
I'm not on the committee, but Terry, I support your motion, so I want to kind of characterize. I think the logic behind the current law is good.
Right.
There may be tweaks to affect how it's implemented. I'm hoping that the short-term solution is exactly what we talk about, the bind. The longer-term solution is an annexation, in which case you can unbind the properties again. And also part of the long-term solution is looking at the code and making sure, I think the essential logic still is upheld, but we don't trip over how it's implemented.
Okay. Seeing no further comment, we have a motion before us. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will recommend that to the full council tonight. And I've got my fingers crossed that we can make this work, because we really want to see that expansion happen. We want to see those jobs staying here. Okay. Thank you. Yep. And thank you for coming to address the council. End of